So I'm not sure if this is accurate information. Actually, there's going to be a lot of information I'm not sure about today. Um, but we're going to be watching these bit rates and so forth because I heard from an individual that I know in the last couple days that supposedly the internet was down for like everybody ever in the last couple weeks. Supposedly some Amazon web servers, DNS type server, like large scale servers had been offline or otherwise experiencing some difficulties. And I kind of wondered and hypothesized, is that why I have been getting these atrocious bit rates on these streams? Right now, we're looking at 4 megabytes per second. We just dropped down to 3. And we're actually at a... I'm not sure about that information because right now we're at a drop frame rate of 2%. But there were some streams we were doing here that had like a 60 or 70% drop frame rate. It was absolutely awful, and I couldn't hold anything more than a couple kilobytes per second every now and then. So let's see what's going on here, and we'll just go with it. You may notice this big flashy banner, Iran's News. I have to remake this banner every time we have a development in this case. Because for whatever reason I keep forgetting to properly save and hold that hold that file on our sources here on OBS. But I actually really like the one we have today because we have, as you can see here on the bottom left, a very spooky looking ski mask emoji, and then we have the Iran's News as a flashlight, and then it has Iran's News and a shoelace, and all these things are relevant to the case. And then you may notice above that where it says CBK, not Deangelo. So, those of you that have been here on the New Cokes channel since before we switched channels, you may remember that I did a stream called Was CBK Joseph James Deangelo? For those of you unaware, CBK is a mysterious ProBoards user who registered on the ProBoards, ironsgsk.proboards.com. Registered on that forum in, I believe, 2015, proceeded to drop a bunch of really weird, cryptic hints and just like weird comments this guy was posting, and we're gonna show him today. And then disappeared from the pro boards on April 24th, 2018. Never logged in again. Hasn't been heard from since. As many of you may know, Joseph Deangelo was arrested for his exposure as the East Area Rapist on April 24th, 2018. So, of course, the internet went completely crazy. People were trying to figure out, was this individual Joseph Deangelo? And then it opened up a whole other can of worms about what does CBK mean? Who is this person? And people, of course, tried to identify him. So far, to the best of my knowledge, that has never been achieved. CBK could be an acronym for the Creek Bed Killer, which was one of his monikers out of Santa Barbara, where he was known to travel through the creek beds, as many of you know with the EAR case, that the original Night Stalker was utilizing canals and creek beds to gain access to neighborhoods and in the backyards of houses. And so, if in fact CBK stood for the Creek Bed Killer, then this would be very, very strange, interesting information. And then there's some that have hypothesized that CBK stands for Cold-Blooded Killer. And I just actually read that now today. I never considered that possibility, but the possibility has been floating around. To this day, we do not know what CBK means. We have not identified this individual. And basically, we don't know if he's Joe Deangelo or not. So I think that when we did the stream on the original New Cokes channel talking about this topic, I didn't have OBS and my computer and all this fancy stuff set up. I was doing streams from the garage on a cell phone, and I was actually basically I had to resort to writing out his posts by hand and then sharing them with you guys on line paper because I had no other means by which to actually convey this information to you and show you some of these posts. But that channel is gone, and we have technologically advanced. We now have our own office here in this little compartment that we're in. Very small compartment, but actually it's cool. I feel like a Gemini astronaut. So we're, I can't this is the walls. Okay, this one's arms, this is the office. This is the cubicle of New Cokes right here. Okay, without further fanfare, let's start looking at CBK. Actually, what I want to show you first is, let's jump into my internet history because I quite intelligently closed all my tabs, which was stupid. Recent post by CBK, and we have CBK. Deangelo was not CBK. Here we go. So, in the interest of transparency, we do have a thread on the pro boards called Deangelo was not CBK. However, there's actually no wow. There's actually no substance to that post at all, really. Watch this. Ooh, spooky. Hiding behind the banner. There's actually no substance in this thread. It's just called Deangelo was not CBK, and then this guy just proceeds to state his opinion like it's a fact. I don't really agree with that, so I checked in on the pro boards today. Periodically I'll go through and make sure that we haven't missed any developments. I like to make sure that something serious didn't happen, like Deangelo dies of cancer, for example. That obviously didn't happen, but on the day that it does, you guys know for sure it'll be covered here on New Cokes as long as I am alive and breathing. However, today I saw that there was a new post on Deangelo was not CBK. And in a case like this, which at one time was a very active true crime mystery and cold case, where now we've identified the offender and we know who the EAR was, the discussion slows down. And, you guys know that I really don't agree with that. I think that once we've identified this offender, then the hard work actually just begins, because now we have to start looking at things with a new lens. In this case, we start knowing who was the EAR, and now we have the answer to that, and so we can start looking at real facts and not just a bunch of nonsense and sketches. I'm really happy. I'm really grateful that I discovered this case after he was identified, because I would be freaking out trying to figure out who the fuck is this guy, and we'd be talking about all kinds of rabbit holes and we would really get nowhere. So, like many of you saw who were here before me and who were my predecessors and stuff in this case, all of that rabbit hole discussion, all of that work, all of that discourse, all of those debates, all of that sleuthing led us nowhere for years. For years, this situation was covered. And it was covered very thoroughly by a lot of very smart people. It's just that EAR was really good at committing crime, and so we had nothing to go off of until Paul Holes came along, developed a compatible genetic profile. Paul Holes and Mary Hong, really. Developed a compatible genetic profile that they could run through the ancestral databases of gedmatch.com, and they were able to identify EAR with investigative genetic genealogy. Until that happened, we were getting nowhere, guys. We really were getting nowhere. And it should be a real eye-opener for people with situations like Zodiac, situations like, I don't know, whatever else, unsolved crimes you guys like, D.B. Cooper and stuff like that. It should be a real eye-opener that all of this sleuthing is usually wasted. And that's a shame, but what it does do is it allows us to start redirecting our areas of focus. What should we actually try to do in a true crime case? And I've said this with Zodiac, for example, that all this sleuthing and trying to crack codes and trying to figure out blah, 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 it's all irrelevant, and what we probably should do is be MVACing the inside of Paul Stein's cab to see if we can recover genetic material. Not a popular opinion. People don't like that, because people want to be able to identify the Zodiac based on a solution to one of his stupid codes, which you're not going to be able to do. What we are going to be able to do, hopefully, I'm an optimist in this situation. I think that the Zodiac's DNA exists somewhere. I just don't know where. But I really like the cab. I like that, Zodiac really interacted with that cab, and it's possible, I'm not saying it is there. I think that there's a very good possibility it's there. But we need to redirect what we're looking at. And that's not a popular, people don't like that, because what happens is it really puts the ball in law enforcement's court, which unfortunately is probably the best way to do it. Because a lot of us don't have access to the cab. So we can't start combing for genetic profiles in the cab. We need the SFPD to do it. We need the Department of Justice to do it. And so far, they're not doing it. I've tried writing to them. I've tried all kinds of things. They're not answering. They don't care. They just don't care. If they cared, they would have MVAC'd that shit already, and they would be sifting through the combined genetic profiles inside that cab until they isolated one that they couldn't eliminate. You know, for example, let's say we run an MVAC in this cab and we find 40,000 skin cells. Maybe those skin cells trace to the genetic profiles of 18 different males. Well, who are 17 of them, and what's the one we can't identify? That guy's the Zodiac. So it's a lot of work. It's certainly a lot of combing. Law enforcement doesn't appear to be patient enough or dedicated enough or persistent enough to do it. Fortunately, with the EAR case, we had a couple of persistent cold case investigators like Paul Holes, like Mary Hong, who were ready to build that genetic profile. Of course, they had access to a lot of genetic material because this is a rape case, but unlike Zodiac. And so we just got lucky. It was the perfect situation for how we could identify this guy. We don't have that with Zodiac, but what we do have is a couple of possible leads. I've been told by Tom Voigt that the taxi cab is a dead end. I'm not ready to accept that until we've MVAC'd that cab and we're told that there are no skin cells there. I don't believe that there aren't any. There probably are some. So what I'm saying is, and what the gist of all this is that a lot of sleuthing gets done that leads nowhere. Just leads nowhere. And I'm happy that when I found this case, it had already been, quote, solved. Now, of course, is it fully solved? Do we actually know where Deangelo was in 1984? No, we don't. And so, is it really solved? Maybe. Maybe we've identified all of his murders. Maybe we haven't. Murder Inc. is a frequent flyer on this channel on New Cokes, and he believes that basically every crime was Deangelo, and I disagree, but I like his contribution, and I like his enthusiasm here. And that's the spirit, man. At least eliminate Deangelo as a suspect. I just read about a great candidate for an EAR murder today. It's actually in El Toro, which is about a stone's throw from my hometown. And we have what's her name? Roxanne Shawl Brown. She was bludgeoned to death and found in a underdevelopment housing tract in El Toro in 1985, as far as I know. And that's possible we have another Deangelo crime there. We don't know. What we do know is that he committed at least 13 murders. All this is to say that in a situation like this, we have to reevaluate everything. We have to start looking at... Now we start looking at the Harrington murder with the knowledge of... Harrington murders. With the knowledge of who did it. Before, we were just trying to figure out who fucking did it. Now we know who did it. So then there's a whole bunch of more work that comes on. What was he doing in Laguna Niguel? Why was he there? Why did he target these two? How did he find them? Etc., etc. Same with the Maggiores. The Maggiores obviously were killed by Deangelo. He pled guilty to that crime, and all the circumstantial evidence substantiates that conviction. But the question still remains, why did he do it, and what significance did Brian and Katie Maggiore have to Joseph Deangelo? We don't know the answer. So while we have all these people running around in this case saying, oh, it's solved, not really, in my opinion. I mean, we have the identity of the offender, but we don't have the information. There's a reason why we're not getting books written. We're not getting, real factual biographies about Joe Deangelo, because we don't know. We're not being told. Law enforcement isn't exactly helping us with that. And I think part of that is pride. The Sacramento Sacramento Sheriff's Department and the Department of Justice are incredibly prideful organizations. We've learned that since the date of April 24th, 2018. And they love not telling us stuff. It's one of their favorite things to do. I should put a banner up on this stream too called Declassify the Holdback, but we're just going to be talking CBK today. So after that 15-minute introduction, let's launch into it. Basically what happened was when I started really assessing the CBK situation and trying to figure out, is CBK Deangelo, I built this table of pros and cons in a column, or each in a column. And although I wasn't ready to declare that CBK is Deangelo, and I don't think that the evidence truly exists to prove such a thing, I was really leaning towards it. I really think that, CBK might in fact be Deangelo. And so a lot of you are wondering, well, what makes you think that? And let's just look at his posts, which we're going to do next. However, before we look into this, it's good for me to tell you guys why this is on the news today. So let's do a little window capture, the way we like to do. Dun-dun-dun, etc. Okay? Dun-dun-dun. That's what you say when you put the news up. So that's me, Z was ALA. I was a little bit moto when I made that account. Really enthusiastic about Lee Allen at that time. Still am. You know, I think that Allen, you know, is a very high probability, very, very realistic possibility that Allen's a Zodiac. You know, I don't have the DNA to prove it, but I'm leaning that way right now. Have been leaning that way for quite some time, probably almost 2 years. And, yeah. I know that a lot of my friends in this community totally don't like that idea. Murder Inc. is one of them, and, you know, other guys are one of them too. But that's okay. And like I've said, in true crime, it's better to be wrong than it is to be right, because at least you know what to eliminate. So, CBK's last... This is a post from Richmond yesterday at 3:44 p.m. CBK's last login places him in a neighboring state at nearly 6 p.m. on the afternoon of the arrest. CBK exhibited odd behavior, but if this is correct, it appears he is not Deangelo. So I replied, said, OMG, with double exclamation marks. Hi, do you have any substantiating evidence or proof for this claim? I frequently release a segment on my channel called Eron's News, and if JJD was not CBK, which I have always mostly believed he was, this would be breaking news, and I would love to cover and announce it to the world. Thank you. So, I know I jumped you know, he hasn't replied yet. Sometimes that can take a couple days on such a quiet ghost town of a forum. But if that's true, then that would rule out CBK as being Deangelo. So that's major. Where did he get that information? I have no idea. But like I said, the evidence is the evidence. If we have proof that CBK logged in from another state at 6 p.m., you know, that would be after. And even the other state thing doesn't really hold up too much unless we can verify that that IP address is not a VPN. Because if I wanted to, if I were so inclined, I could appear to be logging in from anywhere in the world. I would just use private internet access or Molvat or one of these elite VPNs that I used to use when I was an anonymous. And the reality is that you can appear to be anywhere at any, not at any time, but anywhere using a VPN. What we can't fight is timestamps, because of course internet servers, you know, time is something that you can't change. If you could change it, Jules Verne would be wanking it right now because he would rise from the dead and he would still exist, and he's all about time travel. But we can't. So what we can do is that if we can establish that traffic was being sent from CBK's login on a neighboring state at 6 p.m. on the afternoon of the arrest, probably not going to be Deangelo. However, there is actually an argument against this that I didn't even consider until seconds ago, and that's one of the good things about doing these streams, is that we can look at things and develop ideas in lifetime, is that sometimes law enforcement will log into people's accounts. Like, say they arrest Deangelo and they find on his computer that he's been using the name CBK on the pro boards, and they want to, you know, recover all the data from that account. They'll log into that account, and they'll download all that data. Sometimes it requires a court order to do that. Other times, no. I suspect that if they went into the East Area Rapist's house and they found his computer and it was logged into CBK, it would require no further warrants to download that information. But if he wasn't logged in and they came to believe that that was him, then sometimes that might require a warrant, and so then they would go in on the afternoon of the arrest, for example, and dump all that data to a law enforcement hard drive, and then that would be used for whatever evidentiary purposes law enforcement wanted it to be used for. So let's look at CBK and figure out why I think, or why I, you know, was very much open to the possibility that he is in fact Joe Deangelo. We'll go to history and we'll do CBK. Bam, CBK. Oh, what the hell? Okay. So the best way to do this, and I like to verify what we're looking at, is the full deal. As you can see here, Murder Inc. gets a little cameo on the stream where someone's talking about him in the chat. We like you, Murder Inc. You're a good guy. Oh, hey, what's up, everybody? Sorry, I didn't I didn't see the chat because I was so busy ranting. Zap says, oh wow, CBK, I never thought CBK was Joe. What's up, Andy Grossman? Joe was way too old to be using forums. Zap, I totally do talk to you. I was just in my zone going at it, and I didn't look at the chat, and I had so... You look at my screen. Look how busy it is. It has a flashing banner. It has all this stuff going on, right? So it's, you know, you got to understand that sometimes that's just, you know, how it goes. We're going to be looking at the pro boards, and when I'm looking at pro boards or doing window captures and things like this, I can't see your guys' chat, but I will respond to your guys' chat, and I'm going to be going, because I like that interaction, and sometimes you guys help come up with really good ideas and talking points and a direction for a stream. However, pro boards is going to be giving us a little direction for the stream. First thing I want to point out for you guys is that the date registered is April 12th, 2015. Last online, April 24th, 2018 at 5:47 p.m. Deangelo was arrested on April 24th, 2018. CBK has never been identified. CBK disappeared from the internet, as far as I know. So let's see. The first thing we want to look at is when we're going to go through his post is that we want to see where we're starting. So I'm going to have this still be on Iran's news forum. Can you guys read that? Is that big enough, or should I just do a full-scale window capture and we can avoid all the flashy stuff for right now? Let me check the chat and see what's going on. Murder Inc. I like Murder Inc. He's cool. I mean, I think he's totally overambitious. I think he thinks everything is Deangelo. Apollo 13 was blown up by Joe Deangelo, but that's okay. You know, he's got a good... He's a little anti-government for me. Like, I'm not a big fan of the U.S. government's kind of ways sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes. And I think they're hit and miss like anyone is and any organization is. You know, for example, I think that they brought down the Twin Towers, but I also think that they arrested the East Area Rapists. And so those two things are obviously very much opposed in their objectives and agendas, and I tend to just support things that are moral and not support things that are psychopath shit like that. But let's not get into that. What we're going to look at is CBK starts his posting on April 12th, 2015 at 1:28 in the morning. He registered April 12th, 2015 at 1:16. So within 12 minutes, CBK is posting. Okay? What does he say? I was running some checks on... Whoops. Let me make sure what you guys are seeing, too, because I'm going to fucking... Okay. What about JFK? I know I do need a two-screen setup. That would be kind of gangster. I just don't have that right now. What about JFK? Didn't they run paraffin tests on Oswald's hands and he had no gunshot residue? So, I mean, that's kind of serious, but... Let's not go down that rabbit hole, because we're, you know... I mean, you guys, I don't know, man. I wasn't there for any of that shit. The only thing that... I just try to, like, follow the evidence, you know? Okay, so within 12 minutes... Was it 12? Anyway, who cares? Oops. Yeah, within 12 minutes, CBK begins his illustrious and now infamous career on the pro boards. I was running some checks on seniors at Cordova High School in 1976, 1975, 1974, etc., who had relations to Rancho Cordova, Contra Costa areas, Santa Barbara areas, Ventura areas, and Irvine areas who fit and match description of the East Area Rapist. Maybe this has been discussed before, but in looking at the sophomore class Cordova High in 1974 and the senior class of 1976, I ran across Barbara Lee Richardson Easton, who graduated in Rancho Cordova in 1976, a few weeks before the East Area Rapist attacks began, and who was murdered in the Wonderland murders July 1st, 1981 in Los Angeles, a few weeks before the original Night Stalker's last known murder or attack in Goleta, July 26, 27, 1981. David Lynn was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood in Sacramento and was the boyfriend of BLR Easton in the RC/SAC area. David Lind and Ron Lanius were from the Sacramento area and met in prison, Folsom. Okay, first thing I want to point out. Serious, you guys. Did anyone else catch it? You have to be kind of educated in the East Area Rapist case to catch this, because it's subtle, if it's there. I could be just crazy, okay? You see how he puts Folsom in parentheses with the question mark? This entire post is about high school students. He's talking about people from a high school. That's the general gist. This is a cryptic individual. Whoever he is, and we're gonna establish that he's a cryptic individual in these posts. Whoever this guy is, whether he's Deangelo or not, he likes being cryptic. The first thing we notice is that as soon as he starts his career, 12 minutes after registration, he's talking about students at high schools, specifically seniors at high schools, and then he puts Folsom in parentheses. Joe Deangelo attended Folsom High School and dropped out senior year. Or junior, like he did not complete senior year at Folsom High School. Coincidence? Is New Coke's Poquito schizo? Maybe a little bit, not sure. Or is this a coded message to us that the EAR attended Folsom High School? Creepy, because this was posted in 2015, three years and a couple days before anyone knew who the East Area Rapist was, and yet this individual is mentioning Folsom and high schools in the same comment. Okay. Ron Lanius was the leader of the Wonderland Gang, who were robbers, burglars, and drug dealers. They were from the Sac area. David Lynn, prior to the murders in 1981, had been incarcerated several times for burglary, forgery, assault, and assault with intent to commit rape. Lynn graduated in Lodi in 61. He was about 35 to 36 when EAR began, and I don't believe he had blue eyes. But otherwise, one piece of circumstance was that David Lynn had a diagonal front chipped tooth since junior high, and that is an excellent reason to talk with clenched teeth as well. He died in November 95, but there are rumors of the Witness Protection Program. I don't believe David is the Erons, and I'm sure he has been ruled out, but something about the timeline, places, people, and events are surreal. This is a creepy post, guys. Let me point out another thing that's interesting to you. Okay? See where it says I don't believe he had blue eyes? This wasn't a confirmed characteristic of the East Area Rapist until after he was arrested. Because, as it would turn out, Barbara Ray Venter, forensic genetic genealogist who was instrumental in building the family trees that eventually led us to the identity of the East Area Rapist, according to Venter, we had information from the East Area Rapist genetic profiles phenotype that the offender had blue eyes. That was not public information. It was never known by anyone except Barbara Ray Venter and a few select folks in law enforcement. At that time, there was a lot of debate about what color were the East Area Rapist's eyes. Some said icy blue, because that was reported by some witnesses. Some said hazel, and some said other colors. But for CBK to point this out as if it's a confirmed fact about EAR is interesting. You know? Because it seems to me that CBK knows that EAR had blue eyes. Or at least believes he knows. So if he's the EAR, obviously he knows what color the EAR's eyes are, because he's him. If it's not him, then for whatever reason, he's come to believe that EAR had blue eyes, which in fact he did. Okay? Creepy. So what I think of is going on here is that this is a bunch of craziness. It's a bunch of clutter. It reads like almost it's a complicated word salad of irrelevant information. We don't need to know any of this stuff about David Lind or any of these guys because it's a rabbit hole of nonsense. Now, maybe it's relevant to the Wonderland murders, never studied them, don't know anything about them. But the fact is that maybe there's another purpose hiding beneath the surface of this comment. Maybe this comment is telling you that the EAR attended Folsom High School and that he had blue eyes. Okay? Coincidence? Possibly. That would, of course, give us the plausible deniability and the liability shielding that the EAR would want to use when commenting as, let's see. Oh, I see a bunch of stuff from Zap. Okay. Yeah, Zap is not buying it so far. That's okay. Again, guys, this could be nothing. This could all be just rabbit hole bullshit. CBK might not be EAR at all. But it, of course, became very intriguing to people in the EAR community because he logged in last on the same day that Deangelo was arrested and then never logged in again, never surfaced again, never was found. Okay. Let's keep going. Now we have this post called Hello, My Name Is. Somebody using the name RER says, Hi, my name is Robert, and I am new here, and I live in Texas, and just recently read about this story in May 2015 and found it one of the most interesting I've ever read. I hope they catch this guy. Supposedly, Deangelo was a fan of the radio station Red Eye Radio. Not sure if that's true, but that would explain RER. He only posted one time, then he never posted again. I want you all to notice, too, that whoever these guys are, CBK, RER, they're, for one, both using three-letter acronyms as their names, and they're posting in the middle of the night. EAR like to attack in the middle of the night. These are the types of hours that the EAR, possibly and potentially, would be trolling the internet forums, reliving his crimes. He never posts again. And it seems that CBK never introduces anyone else on the forum again. He never says hello to a new user. He only says hello to a new user 30 minutes after RER posts his introduction. He says, "Welcome to the forum, Robert." Sign of the original Night Stalker, Libra. Not true, as far as I know. But for whatever reason, he liked that one-word thing there. Okay. Do you believe the EAR fathered any children? CBK says one daughter. Now, we know that not to be true. I think he had 2 or 3. So we'll just keep... Now, what we could be seeing here is disinformation. He's cluttering. Now, we're working hypothetically, guys. A lot of this stuff, if I'm making a point for the idea that CBK is the EAR and he's doing disinfo, he's doing cryptography, he's doing weird shit to throw you off, it's all hypothetical. I mean, I don't know this at all, but we're just throwing ideas out here. That EAR could be trying to clutter the discussion with bullshit information. What's the sign of the original Night Stalker? Libra. How many kids did he have? 1 daughter. Not true, not true. But for whatever reason, CBK likes to state things as if they're just facts. You know. How old do you think the EAR was when he started? CBK writes 20. Is that true? No. In fact, I mean, it's possible it's true, but then you have to go into non-canonicals. You have to start talking about, well, what was going on before the canonical crimes. Because when the EAR starts his crime spree as the East Area Rapist, he's 31. When he starts as the Visalia Ransacker, he's like 28, 29, whatever that time. So, was he burglarizing houses and committing crimes 9 years before the Visalia Ransacker? Very possible. We don't know. So you have to, in order to consider that to be a true claim, you have to start accepting non-canonicals. According to the canonical narrative, the East Area Rapist wasn't doing anything until he was about 28 or 29. I know a lot of you guys like to think he was the Cordova Meadows burglar. I like to think that some of those Cordova Meadows burglar crimes are also the East Area Rapist because they're very suspicious and they reek of East Area Rapist type activity, or as we call EAR activity. But we don't know for sure. In fact, we don't even know for sure if the Cordova Meadows burglar was a single offender. We only have the possible linkages and connections of these crimes by modus operandi. We don't know. Now, here's an interesting one. What was or is Iran's jobs? CBK writes only RS. Remember when I said this person was cryptic? What the fuck does that even mean? What does that mean? RS. Could it mean Rancho Save Mart? Because if it means Rancho Save Mart, we all know that the East Area Rapist was a truck mechanic for Save Mart in Rancho, or near Rancho Cordova. Actually, it was in... It was actually across the street from the FBI field office of Sacramento, which is mind-blowing, guys. Talk about flipping off law enforcement. He establishes his career adjacent to the field offices of the FBI for California. And that's a fact. We know that to be true. He was a truck mechanic at a Save Mart distribution center where you could stand at the Save Mart distribution center and throw a rock into the field offices of the FBI. Talk about middle finger to the government. But either way, whether or not this means Rancho Safe Mart, what the fuck does it mean? It's a cryptic answer by itself. It gives no information and it has no clear answer. So we can see that CBK is this type of person. You know? I take it CBK wasn't a flat earther. Zap, I'm gonna try to catch up on all this stuff that you're saying. We'll have like a little freeform after the main presentation is over, and I'll be going. He says you can still win me over. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I'm not even trying to prove to you that CBK was the EAR. I kind of was leaning towards it. But if in fact we can rule him out with evidence, I'm open to switching beliefs here. I mean, I follow the scientific evidence, guys. That's why I went from flat earther to round earther. Scientific evidence happened, and I had no other choice but to buy it. So, chances that someone here has the right Eron's POI. CBK says 100% no doubt that someone here has the right POI. How can he be so sure? 100%? Is it because he knows who the East Area Rapist is? Again, more cryptography. We don't know what the fuck that answer means. But CBK is going to show us repeatedly that he's a type of person who's using weird answers. I like to draw your attention, if anyone missed it, back down to the Folsom High School comment. It's the first thing he posts. He puts Folsom in parentheses like this, which is weird. This is really actually weird, guys. Because look at this. If he knows so much about David Lind and Ron Lanius, whatever, if he knows their life story, he should know what prison they were in. Why does Folsom precede a question mark? Is it possible that that Folsom remark has nothing to do with the prison? Anyway, so are we seeing cryptography, or are we seeing I used to do too much amphetamines? I don't know. Okay. Do you think GSK is alive or dead? For those of you who are unfamiliar, GSK is another moniker for the East Area Rapist original Night Stalker. I try as hard as I can not to elaborate on that moniker because I think it's stupid as hell. But do you think GSK is alive or dead? And CBK writes one word, alive. How can he be so sure? If he's the EAR, then we understand why he can be so sure. If he's not the EAR, then it's a pretty good guess because EAR was still alive. And guys, there was a very real possibility that this guy was dead. We have to consider things, man. Like, we didn't know if this guy was still alive. His last known crime was in 1986, and for all appearances and by all accounts, he never offended again. Usually, that's an outlier type thing. Usually serial killers are not like that because their sex drive is wired to their murder drive, and they simply don't stop. Do you guys stop having sex? You know? I mean, maybe your drive slows down, but do you ever just stop? Some people do. There's people that become celibates, people that become priests. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's more rare than not. Most people continue to have some kind of a sexual interaction for the rest of their lives, and generally that's the type of situation we see with serial killers, except Eron's was an outlier. For whatever reason, CBK was totally convinced that this guy was still alive. Other areas and states that the Eron's has murdered in, and he says Florida. Why does he say that? I don't know. I just don't know. Why is he so sure? Don't know. Now we're going to start getting poetic, cryptic quotes from CBK. For example, in this post on August 12, 2016, CBK writes, "The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook." He doesn't even attribute the quote to anyone. He's just being weird. He's a weird guy. You know who else spoke poetically and weird? Remember the quote, "I'll stick this knife in you and you'll be silent forever and I'll be gone in the dark"? How it's a weird, poetic fucking thing to say. EAR loved his weird, poetic quotes. He was quoted all the time as saying weird shit. Then we have CBK on August 12, 2016. "There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true." Then on August 16, 2016, CBK writes, "To see what is in front of one's nose needs a constant struggle." Edmund Kemper, "Why is Edmund or Edmund such a popular name with these guys? It's almost like he's trying to throw you off the course of Joe." But again, we don't know. I mean, right? MED is his mother, he says. This is the thing. Like, CBK says stuff that's like substantiate that. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? MED is his mother. I don't know. Is it a coincidence that D and Deangelo? I don't know. We have no way to know. It's just weird stuff. So whoever CBK is, he's weird as shit. That's what we're determining here. Like, what? Look at this weird comment. So he proceeds to, well, he's basically, he posts every couple months, really, which is kind of weird. But March 28th, 2017 at 11:59 a.m., he says, it was in 2000, someone writes, is 2017 the year? And he says, it was in 2015, but the arrest will be made this year, I hope. What is that? What was in 2015, the year? Like the year that you registered? I don't know. I don't know, guys. What the fuck means? Then on October 22nd, 2017, Wovoka says he was very involved in hit within the church. CBK writes, I agree, but not the Seventh-day Adventist. Significance of the dates. Elfenir, no, that's a different person. I don't know who wrote this. But somebody, let's look at these dates now that we're here. This is a Cleopatra post. Cleopatra's kind of cool, but I'm a bigger Tribuco fan. Tribuco, of course, is the famous user that made the post is the EAR cop. But, oh my goodness, guys. See, this is where things are going to start getting weird. Yeah, I'm not 100% on anything, Zap. You know, Morph is fucking crazy for saying some shit like that. I actually forgot about that. Morph, he needs to just calm down, man. How the fuck can you be 100% sure that someone's a Zodiac? Like, really? You're going to put your life on that claim? Like, come on. Okay. Significance of dates. Cleopatra writes, I am thinking certain dates are significant to the East Area Rapist, or he just wanted to relive some crimes on attack anniversaries. There are dates when an attack took place on the same day or one day apart in another year. Other years have months where a crime was repeated but the date is off by 2 or 3 days. Maybe the EAR wanted to attack on the same day as before, but something prevented him from attacking on his preferred date, such as work or family. And of course, this was posted in 2017 before we knew who the EAR was. And the dates that are listed by Cleopatra, let's make sure you guys are seeing the right stuff here. Zoom forward. Can you guys see that? Okay, cool. So here are the dates that are provided by Cleopatra. March 18th, 1977. March 18th, 1978. March 19th, 1980. I have a headphone unplugged. That doesn't affect you, but it does affect me. March 19th, 1980. May 5th, 1977, May 4th, 1986, June 24th, 1978, June 25th, 1979, July 6th, 1978, July 5th, 1979, September 4th, 1976, September 6th, 1977, November 10, 1976, November 10, 1977. He accidentally writes 1077, but I'm not going to fault him. December 2nd, 1977, December 2nd, 1978. All right. I want to highlight one specific set of double dates here. November 10th, 1976 and November 10, 1977. What day was Joseph Deangelo? Well, first let's look at the CBK. Oops. Where'd it go? This is creepy. These posts start getting this. I remember now, like some of these things, and this is a weird one. CBK writes, I believe his birthday was very close to more than one of those dates. Remember, we have a set of double dates here that are November 10, 1976 and November 10, 1977. Well, when was Joseph Deangelo born? Whoops. He was born November 8th, 1945. So if CBK is throwing us a hint here, he says that he believes that the EAR was born very close to more than one of those dates. November 8th is only 2 days before November 10th, for those of you who can't mathematic. And that would be a very true comment from CBK. EAR was born very close to more than one of the dates listed on that list. Because we now know the EAR's birthday was November 8th, 1940, what was it? 5. Makes me sure things. Okay, it gets even weirder here now. Because... okay, it's like, as you start going on, you're seeing this, like... What do they call it when a serial killer starts, like, progressing? It's called, like, a, I guess, I can't remember. Whatever. It's an acceleration. His weirdness, CBK's weirdness, and his crypticism, and his... Is that a word? Anyway. His cryptographic nature, and his information's accuracy start becoming more apparent. It's as if, as CBK realizes that he's getting away with dropping hints on this forum, he starts, dropping better hints. This one is weird. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Iran's a cop legend. Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Trabuco, who made that thread, on January 13th, 2018 at 1 a.m., Trabuco, well, he liked it on that day. Anyway, Trabuco on January 12th, 2018 at 6:10 p.m., about 3 months before the arrest of the Irons, says, sounds like something the Irons would do. Be absent from school on picture day. CBK says, yes, his senior year in high school would be one time. The Irons didn't have a picture day on senior year in high school because he had already dropped out of school. So we don't have a senior portrait of the East Area Rapist. So CBK called this accurately. How did he know that? Don't know. Creepy. Oops. Okay, the 5-year gap. CBK says he moved out of state and back, got married, and started a family within that 5-year gap. I mean, he had already been married, and he'd started a family, I think, right before the 5-year gap. Not exactly sure on the timeline there, guys, so whatever. Twinless twin. Where do you think the Ons lives if he's still alive? Rancho Cordova, just a few blocks from number 1. And that post was made April 23rd, 2018 at 10:58 p.m. After this, CBK never posts again. He was last online the same day that Joe Deangelo was captured. Is he the EAR? Fuck, I don't know. Weird, though. It's all very weird. Because there were a couple of predictions, a couple of claims that were made by Trabuco, by CBK, that were very, very strangely accurate. I want to point out one more thing, and I know Murder Inc. is going to love it. Murder Inc. probably is already seeing this and going, why don't you talk about the Earthrise? So I'm going to talk about the Earthrise. So, for those of you familiar with the Zodiac case, the Zodiac killer frequently used the Apollo 8 Earthrise stamp on his correspondence. We see, I don't know how many times and what times specifically, but we see that Zodiac is mailing letters in, and the postage on those letters has the Apollo 8 Earthrise image as the stamp. And CBK's profile picture is the Earthrise from Apollo 8 also. So, Murder Inc. loves that. Of course, I'm sure he would go, but that proves he's the Zodiac killer. Guys, he's a better suspect than Don Chaney. I'll tell you that. I don't think that he's the Zodiac, but if you had two choices left and you say he's either Don Chaney or he's the EAR, I would go for EAR because Don Chaney looks like a totally awesome, nice guy who has a good family in it. I want to put that picture of Don Chaney smiling with his family up here and just be like, don't slander this man. He's a nice man. He tried to help us. Whether or not he was right or wrong, he tried to tell us that he thought he knew who the Zodiac was, and I think he's a cool guy. I would hang out with him. He got a little weird in his later years, but who the fuck doesn't? And I like Don Chaney. I don't think Don Chaney's the Zodiac killer. I think that the EAR is a way better suspect for the Zodiac killer than Don Chaney, because Don Chaney never killed anyone as far as we know. And East Area Rapists killed a fuckload of people as far as we know. So, that's just the Earthrise thing. A little bit weird. It's kind of like a little hint to Zodiac for whatever reason. And then let's go through Zap's comments. Okay, so you guys, I can see the chat now. And we have Zap really active in the chat. He says, from that post, he just seems like a normal researcher. Yeah. Not discounting that. I'm not going to come on here and radically claim, oh, how dare you, CBK was Deangelo. I like to really let an idea digest. I was a lot more moto about CBK being Deangelo before. So far, I haven't seen anything that rules him out. except for if we can prove that he was posting after or he logged in. But even that, we'd have to know, why was there an out-of-state login from CBK? Where was he posting from? And who the fuck was he? Are these VPN IP addresses when he logs in, or are we seeing a home IP that can be traced to a known individual and therefore we know who CBK is? And the big question here, question on everyone's minds, and what brought CBK to relevance in the first place, is why did he suddenly disappear the same day Deangelo was arrested? Is it because he just thought case solved, don't care anymore? That happened. Look at Drifter. When the case got solved, Drifter just disappeared. Who the fuck was Drifter? I don't know. He wasn't the East Area Rapist, but I'd like to know who Drifter was, and I never really got a straight answer from that, because if anyone asked who was Drifter, they just go, oh, he was that dickhead mod from the forum. No one ever really said who Drifter was. I don't think he was the East Area Rapist, but he appears to have never posted again after the arrest. Okay. Let's see. Then Zap says, what coincidence? BTK was meant to have been on Tom's BTK forum back in the day. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't surprise me. BTK was a total attention whore. Then Zap says, I don't know, seems innocent enough to me. Oh, blue eyes, I never knew that. Yeah, that's one of those things that we developed from a phenotype. We knew that, we went to the moon. Law enforcement did know that the East Area Rapist had blue eyes because they had his DNA. There were two information pieces from his phenotype, profiles and information that we knew that he had blue eyes and he was prematurely balding. Which, of course, yeah. Let's see. You can still win me over, says Zap. Zap says, I was on the forum back when CBK was. Would have been insane if we had ever talked. Yeah, that would be crazy. I mean, if you were hanging out with Joe Deangelo and didn't know it. So I take it CBK wasn't a flat earther. Don't know. Probably not. Most people aren't. Statistically, probably not. No. You're fine, he says. I mean, Morph is 100%. We talked about that. GSK is dumb. Totally agree. The phone calls, though, in the early 2000s. Yeah, I think that there were more phone calls than we know about. I think that law enforcement was pretty convinced that this guy was alive because Jane Carson Sandler says she was stalked for, the rest of her life. She's alive still, but, for the rest of the time that Deangelo was free, she was reporting weird stalking activities, such as hang-up phone calls and other things. We can look at that. There's a Florida news article about it, if you want to talk about that. Let's see. Jessica's dumb, so he was likely alive. Yeah, that is one of the things that lean towards it. But we actually don't have much proof of that. I think they had proof that in 1991 he was alive or something. But we don't know for sure. And then Zap, of course, mentions the legendary Tribuco thread was the East Area Rapist a cop, which is one of those things that... Okay, so let's see here. I want to talk about the Jane Carson Sandler thing, because it is interesting, and let's see. Jane Carson Sandler... East Area Rapist phone calls, maybe. I don't know. It can be tricky to find this in live time, so hopefully we can find it. Phone calls... So I'll put the window capture up again. I can show you guys this. This is interesting, and I am gonna try to find their source. It might be no, it's not the Modesto Bee, right? What's the source on that claim? It's a Florida news outlet or something like that. In 2017, just a year before Deangelo's arrest, Carson Sandler received a series of silent calls to her landline. She believed it was her attacker on the line, possibly triggered by news about the ongoing case. The calls were not just hang-ups. She felt someone was listening on the other end. She and her husband installed an alarm system in response. Okay. Let's see here. A lot of those phone calls, Zap, are from, the 70s. They're gonna kill you, and the, you're never gonna catch me, you dumb fuckers. That's from 1977. Stuff like that. So where is the Florida thing? I guess maybe if we have to dive deeper. In AI mode. Oh my god, AI is literally getting featured on my channel. Oh gosh. How disgusting. Oh jeez. Okay. I think that this is the... Oh, it's the Modesto Bee. I'm retarded. I thought it was in Florida for some reason. I don't know what the fuck. Let's look at this article. Accept. Close. So this is on the Modesto Bee. It says, she had survived an attack by the East Area Rapist in 1976. She wants you to help find him. Shut up or I'll kill you, in quotes. The man wore a ski mask, black leather gloves, and high-top black Converse sneakers. He hissed those words through what sounded like clenched teeth as he held a butcher knife to Carson Sandler's chest. She was sitting up in her king-size bed in her Citrus Heights, California home. Her 3-year-old son lay next to her. Her husband had just left for work. She heard the garage door close and saw a light in the hall, then heard someone running toward her room. It was 6:30 in the morning on Tuesday, October 5th, 1976. Shut up, shut up, shut up, or I'll kill you, he repeated as he scraped the knife across her chest, leaving behind drops of blood. I just want your money. Okay, whatever you want, just don't hurt us, Jane told him. But he didn't give her a chance to tell him where the money was. He blindfolded and gagged both Jane and her son. He tied their wrists and ankles with shoelaces. Then he slowly, methodically ripped up sheets. The ripping sound must have gone on for 5 minutes. You guys, you know how creepy this motherfucker is, by the way? It's things like this that make you look at the double murder of Charlene and Lyman Smith and the pile of tree bark next to the bed and just really get the wheels turning on how creepy this fucking dickhead was. That he might have stood there next to, and we don't know because they're both dead and we can't tell us, but it's very possible that he stood there next to the Smiths and methodically and slowly peeled the bark off of the wood that he was about to use to bludgeon them to death, and they knew it was coming. So that's terrible. Jane wondered if he would use the strips to hang her and her son. She felt her heart hammering inside her chest. When the ripping sound stopped, the man picked up the 3-year-old boy. He either placed him on the floor or took him to another room. Jane couldn't be sure. Then he raped her. Later, she would learn that she was the 5th victim of a serial rapist whose violent tendencies would turn to murder. During the spree that plagued California until '86, he'd raped at least 45 women and murdered 12 people, according to the FBI. His victims ranged in age from 12 to 41. He'd been called the East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker, the blah blah blah. 2 of the crimes believed to have been committed by the man were in northwest Modesto in 1978. The first, a robbery, home invasion, burglary, and rape, occurred June 5th west of McHenry Avenue in the area of Union Avenue. The second Modesto crime was committed June 23rd on the east side of McHenry. He's never been caught. Now, more than 4 decades after her attack, Jane lives in South Carolina. She has made it her mission to help other survivors of sexual assault. Good fucking job. Awesome work there, Jane. On March 18th, she will appear on HLN Unmasking a Killer. This is a very good series, by the way. A 5-part series on California's most prolific uncaught serial killer. She hopes by telling her story and reminding people about the decades-old crimes, some with new information might come forward. One tip could be all it takes to identify the man that has long eluded investigators. One tip, Jane believes, could bring closure to the dozens who survived his attacks. Jane hopes for that one tip. Okay. Jane retired to Sun City Hilton Head, a North Carolina adult community, in 2000 with her second husband. It had been 41 years since the rape. She's written 1 book, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's get on to the phone calls here. Can we get into this here? I know there's a lot here, guys. There's a lot here. Okay, more stuff. Oh, how creepy. Oh my god. It took time for Jane to heal. In the spring of 1977, the wound was still fresh, but things were getting easier. Her home wasn't quite as frightening anymore. She felt safe enough one weekend while her husband was away on temporary duty for an Air Force assignment to sunbathe in her backyard. It was, after all, surrounded by a 6-foot-tall wooden fence no one could see through. I mean, guys jumping fences all the time. She put on a bikini and lay on a reclining chair, her back towards the sun. She undid the straps of her top to get an even tan. Then a pebble flew toward her and landed on the ground. It was strange. The wind wasn't blowing. Maybe it was a bug, not a pebble. Then one of those tiny rocks hit her. She couldn't tell where they were coming from or see who was throwing them. Holding her top in place, she sprinted into the house. She locked the doors and called the police. The police were there in 10 minutes. They knew Jane's story and didn't take her call lightly. They jumped over the fence. Jane followed them to search the nearby orchard. Jane cut her hand coming over. She still has the scar. Police finally located an old man who lived in a trailer nearby who confessed to throwing the pebbles. Okay, so, yeah, anyway, so that's not, whatever. She started getting phone calls from the rapist. He had also called some of his other victims. Sometimes he breathed heavily, sometimes he promised to kill them, sometimes there was only silence. Jane received several calls with heavy breathing. She only answered in the hope that police could trace them. In 2017, Jane got 5 more phone calls. 3 one day, about an hour apart, 2 the next day. All silent, but not hang-ups. You could tell someone was listening on the other end. It's him, she thought, each time she answered her Sun City landline. But she kept picking up, afraid she'd hear his voice, but knowing she would, in some odd way, almost welcome it. At least if she heard his voice, she'd know he was still alive. It was about this time that a television show on the EAR was airing, she said. Maybe that triggered something in her attacker. If it wasn't him, it was some sick person who wanted to frighten her, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, if that's the case, if... Oops, let's see something here. You guys looking... Oh, you're getting enough data. I don't know what they're talking about. If he's calling in 2017, then in fact we do know... Oh, you guys are seeing some crazy stuff on your screen. It looks like a NASA display. That's what I have to look at, guys. Sometimes. It's just... It never simplifies, you know? There's moving parts going on. This is Houston. You're cleared for ignition. Like, what the fuck? There's, like, graphs and stuff on the screen. That's crazy looking. So anyway, that's Iran's news for the day. We've been on for an hour now, and I think we've pretty much covered it. I jumped the gun on assuming that a login from CBK in a neighboring state proves anything. Because it's possible that... that was law enforcement logging into the account and downloading its data. We don't know. We don't know who CBK was. He's never come forward. So, that's the end of Iran's news. We'll close all these crazy graphics if I can find them. There we go. Live from a spinning ball, this has been